told me, don't come by my house. We're done.
The boomer in me grew up at a time of cable television where if a series was being binge-watched or even viewed with weekly episodes, the new season would appear in a few months or less than a year. The writers and the makers having clarity of where the show must be headed, prior to it even being renewed as well. There was an active, functional nature of how production would lead to a lack of delays, unlike today where shows with their new season seem to appear years later, in the process also losing the connection the audience had with the storyline and its characters. There was a 2-year gap between season 1 and season 2 of The Family Man, but the third season comes after 4 years, and this is a heartbreaking tale for me personally. For this is one of my favorite Indian series and I absolutely loved the characters in this universe created by Raj&DK, but it is undeniable that such a gap between seasons of the show often creates a distance between the audience and the fictional characters. There is a raw grit and realism to the genre of the Indian spies and The Family Man that was extremely refreshing, and I was invested from the word go. But I must say that the third season curse has definitely hit Raj&DK, something that I did not believe was possible. This is something that happened with Delhi Crime as well, probably being the weakest season this year as Shaifali Shah went toe-to-toe with Huma Qureshi, a show that anyway lost its purpose and core after season 1 when Richie Mehta distanced himself from the IP as it transitioned to just become random chapters of Delhi Crime which Vartika and her team crack. Moving on to The Family Man, it's important to note where we left off season 2 as Srikanth and the task team were successful in stopping Raji from escaping. They were awarded for their efforts, and the glimpse the makers showed us in the end of the episode was how the world was overwhelmed by the pandemic and how this would act as the perfect time for sleeper cells associated with China to attack from the northeast of India. This was presented with a glimpse of Project Guan Yu going underway, making all of us assume that it would be set during the pandemic, in turn showcasing how the country is dealing with a global health crisis and is taken aback by their international borders also being compromised. Season 3 absolutely scraps the idea of the pandemic being in the backdrop and just expands on Project Guan Yu. The plot of this season is extremely convoluted, and I as a viewer till the 5th episode was literally in my notes writing down where is this series going, but in a nutshell, the northeast Indian states, especially the borders shared with Myanmar, seem to be on high alert due to the activities taking place near the border. This is in sharp contrast to the peace and development talks that the Indian government wants to execute in collaboration with the rebel groups of the various states. Circumstances go out of hand on a mission, so much so that Srikanth becomes a suspect in the eyes of the Indian government, compelling him to be on the run. How all of this ties into influential businessmen and billionaires wanting to make government sign defense deals for their vested interests, the geopolitical impact of this from an India, Pakistan and China perspective, and how Srikanth Tiwari, played by Manoj Bajpayee, gets personally involved in making sure that it does not lead to a full-scale war out of the purview of the task, leading to a magnifying glass especially being focused upon a notorious drug smuggler of the region. Rukma, played by Jaideep Ahlawat, is the premise of The Family Man Season 3. Very simple and easy to follow, right? Yep, here's me telling you the good and bad aspects of the series so that you guys can ultimately decide whether to watch The Family Man on Prime Video India or not. Fleeting moments of action choreography and staging. One of the aspects of filmmaking that I believe Raj&DK do not get enough credit for is the staging and action choreography in their films and series. They are famous for these long shots that are intricately choreographed, and it genuinely extracts some of the most slick and engaging action set pieces I have seen from Hindi cinema. This is something that was consistent with The Family Man Season 1 and Season 2, presenting us some of the most impressive action choreography. Famously, I remember the nail-biting sequence in the hospital in Season 1 as Musa escapes from the premises, the chase sequence with Raji in Season 2 on the streets and rooftops of Chennai, or one of my favorites in Season 2 when the entire task team gets ambushed from all corners. The action was a balance of practical locations, and if you read about the behind the scenes work done on The Family Man, a lot of rehearsals in acing these long shots. You get a glimpse of the brilliance from the first shot of Season 3 as an event is taking place and the camera moves from the performances to the conversation happening with the chief guest panning towards the crowd and just perfectly staging the scene for an ultimate impactful reveal. The best action sequence in season 3 was in episode 2, involving Jaideep Ahlawat being ambushed in an establishment in which he resides, and this was the classic Raj&DK style of choreography that moves from rooms to rooms, changes levels consistently, and masterfully cuts through the use of pillars, and it becomes a combination of great hand-to-hand combat and shootouts. I was also really blown away by Jaideep's nimbleness and movement. I could see him in several instances actually getting his hands dirty versus being dependent on masking it with a body double, at least for the most part. The other engaging action sequence sadly only features in the last and 7th episode that sheds light on an escape strategy from a rescue mission, and this breaks my heart because a series that is known for many elements, one of which is its action choreography, sparingly expands on the same this season. Distracting moments of poor CGI. An element of Raj&DK's filmography that is also consistent for most of their work is their love for shooting films in practical locations. There is something extremely immersive of the visual texture of their stories because it's set in locations that you can identify and are familiar with. It provides a lived-in experience versus something that is artificial, and this may be the first time where I've seen a Raj&DK story and I felt like a lot of the visuals of this season were manufactured and curated versus having the same gritty tone. This is especially true for all the traveling shots in this series. Every sequence that has been shot in a car while traveling has been created with a green screen in the background, never really making you feel like the characters are traveling in the sensitive areas in the state. This is even true for when Srikanth and his family are traveling in a train, never really feeling like they are actually moving from one state to the other, just a curated set created to mimic a train. There is also a light aircraft sequence with Nimrat and Jaideep that just made me facepalm. There are also instances where the characters interact with each other over a smoke sometimes in the office space next to windows overlooking the city, and the CGI of the landscape is almost distracting on how fake it looks, not even making the task office feel like a Sarkari daftar in South Mumbai. Filmmakers that are known for their realism through frames, for the first time in my viewing experience, had an artificial touch with their visuals this time. Moments of OG banter and competent performances. In my opinion, the first 2 seasons of The Family Man were organically funny. There was an ease and flair with which the characters interacted with each other. Insults were also masked with such fluidity and conviction in dialogues that scenes became memes and forever etched in our memory. Everyone remembers the iconic chase sequence from season 1, or the growing frustration of Srikanth while dealing with his doctors or the therapist mending their marriage. And in season 3, hilarious moments are only present in rare instances, making me only genuinely chuckle when Srikanth and JK, played by Sharib Hashmi, share screen space together. The two actors have absolutely amazing chemistry together, Sharib Hashmi being constantly hungry and this nonchalant nature getting on Srikanth's nerves extracted several funny moments, especially a scene where they try to connect in Telugu with the TC. What's an element that is almost completely let go of, and I find this to be a really sad evolution of the series, is that the comedy is completely abandoned in the physical tasks Srikanth engaged in. There was a beautiful balance between the image of a common man and him being capable of saving the country that had a self-aware humor that was captured even in the moments of action, and this is absolutely let go of this season. This is in sharp contrast to the Spyverse movies we are used to, where the heroes are invincible. Srikanth is human, he stumbles, he is frustrated, oftentimes screws up, and that's what drew us to him. But the funny is just missing this season. I must say though, Manoj Bajpayee is brilliant this season. He really taps into the psychological space of Srikanth being avoidant and constantly moving on to tasks versus dealing with his emotions. This evasive attitude often catches up to him, being on the verge of tears momentarily, only to move on again, to put on a brave face for everyone. Jaideep Ahlawat as Rukma does his best in order to provide us an intimidating challenge for Srikanth this season, but his character is not given the depth that he deserved in my opinion. Jaideep does everything right. He is cunning, brutal and physically towering over everyone and has an unmatched confidence in front of camera. But his origin, motivation and goal is extremely one-tone and basic. His origins are hinted at but never explored. The delicious nature of the casting of Manoj Bajpayee and Jaideep Ahlawat together going face to face with each other sounds so exciting, but it is barely even exploited this season. The only other character from the cast that I can give some credit to and praise to is Seema Biswas as the Prime Minister Basu, and a cameo that is momentarily fun to watch, but I must confess, every new challenge and new character introduced this season was either bland, boring or completely wasted. Speaking of which, underwhelming characters and wasted subplots. I think all of us have come to the conclusion that compelling stories, especially that out of the action genre that has elements of espionage and national security being threatened, only become compelling if it has an intimidating villain. While Jaideep does what the script demands, he is an element of a larger system that is genuinely managed by characters that are either extremely boring or just terrible at their job. Jugal Hansraj sparingly appears this season and leaves little to no impression. Nimrat Kaur plays the role of a fixer who is calling the shots, and the one thing that really leaves an impact are her dresses and heels she sports in every episode. While Nimrat Kaur looks absolutely spectacular in the series, her character is absolutely bland. She sports this pretentious English accent, transitioning to dialogues like "I am chuffed" to convince us that she really is a Brit. And as her character arc progresses, you just come to the conclusion that she's just really bad at her job. Oftentimes, and I say this as an experience of watching her in the latter episodes, maybe as late as episode 5 and 6, you as a viewer almost get frustrated wondering what is her goal, what does she want to do, because in some instances it goes nowhere. Harman Singha plays the role of a new officer in charge of the task team going after Srikanth, and I don't mean this as an analysis of his performance specifically, but his character's impact is absolutely negligible, being absolutely bland in intent and even personality. There is a subplot with him and Shreya Dhanvantari, another character who is terribly wasted in this series, that comes at a point where the case is really gaining steam, and it absolutely derails the storytelling. There are instances where Jaideep and Nimrat are connecting over a local drink. This is when tensions are high, the task at hand needs absolute control, and I was just looking around thinking, how are these people just lazing around? There are so many moving elements, a mission from the rebel groups, a mission for Srikanth that is personal, a defense contract with the government, an operation being conducted by Nimrat Kaur, an angle with Darshan Kumar's character too, that eventually you realize there is just a connective tissue missing that consistently engages you as a viewer this season. Relevant themes and reality. I generally feel like that at the end of season 2, Raj&DK were going to make something gritty and compelling on Nagaland or Manipur specifically, and with the developments of this country and the sheer violence that consumed the states, specifically in connection to the role of the government when attention and care was needed, that as the years passed by, to avoid controversy, this idea became more watered down and it did not become a state-specific plot, but a generic sense of the northeast of India being under threat. Patal Lok at least dove deep on the eccentricities of the Nagamese community, but here there is almost a generic broad stroke, generalizing and coupling everything together as a singular issue of the northeast of India. There are, however, relevant themes that did stick out for me, specifically pertaining to the Prime Minister being emotionally affected by Twitter trends and her public image. Advisors next to her influencing her with rhetoric like "Muh tod jawab," "Logo ko basu ka taakat dikhate hain," the harsh decisions that governments take not to provide solutions but to ease the tension of outrage, especially when it comes to banning Chinese apps while still engaging in diplomatic ties with the same country. The pressure of the government to project themselves as devoid of faults, come what may in the public eye, is a consistent feature that was interesting to see. However, what I have to conclude is the series almost seems to have engaged in a story that they did not originally intend, as there is a connection with these characters that seems to have just evaporated in the process of these 4 years. Srikanth this season becomes a sorry version of himself. No matter how incompetent he may be in some instances in his personal life, you knew he was a capable soldier, but through large portions of this season, Srikanth is confused on what is happening, mostly being on the run versus being a part of the solution or leading the charge. I loved this family and its unique eccentricities. Dhriti, after dealing with the trauma of season 2, had a newfound respect and love for her father, but from the onset in season 3, she is presented as distant, avoidant, and the image of what boomers think the left represents. She sports colored hair, a septum ring, is a climate and LGBTQI activist, identifies as they, them, and it is never explored. It almost seemed like the makers wanted to check brownie points for Twitter engagement, versus really expanding on how Dhriti has evolved as a human. Atharv is presented as being bullied in school by characters that are straight out of a 90s Bollywood movie that I just couldn't take seriously. We ended season 2 in Suchi wanting to confess something to Srikanth, and the assumption was that this would be explored in season 3 on what was the conversation that went down, but it is never addressed, and we are to assume that this animosity and awkward silence is what has been normalized in this dynamic. There is absolutely zero clarity that we get about their relationship, and weirdly, the series just goes through to this new mission as if we didn't have so much baggage of being a part of their lives since season 1, making season 3 genuinely the weakest season of The Family Man in my opinion. It's an absolute crime that after 4 years we only got 7 episodes, and the way this season ends will frustrate and enrage any fan of this show. And that was the video, guys. Write down in the comments below what you thought about The Family Man season 3. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram, the handle's right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.